The Leone is a premium Tier 5 Italian destroyer that's been in World of Warships Legends for quite some time. I don't know how long, I know it's been years, and I remember vaguely when this ship was first released, I didn't like it at all. I thought it was pretty bad, probably one of the worst destroyers at Tier 5, not worth playing in any way, just a very disappointing vessel. Now, in the time since it's released, I know it's been buffed once, some time ago, and that buff did make it a little bit better. But in the May 2026 update, Wargaming implemented an Italian destroyer rework, and as an Italian destroyer, albeit a premium one, Leone was subject to this rework, and it may have gotten one of the best buffs out of all of the Italian DDs. I'm not sure on that, haven't tested out every single one of them, but I played the Leone quite extensively last night. I probably had 5 or 6 matches recorded to choose from, and so I've got about 2.5 of them here for you to view. And I think both of these together show off the Leone's new capabilities. This first match, spoiler alert, is about half of a match, and it's going to end up being a win, even in spite of the fact that it might not look like it at first. We're going to be sunk fairly early on. The second match is going to be a loss, but again, I think both of them show off the Leone's new capabilities. Now, we'll talk about the specifics of the buff in a moment, but the main thing, I suppose, is that the Leone can now shoot sap out of its main battery guns, and this sap is especially powerful. Now, as a class, destroyers are the most influential in World of Warships Legends. I've said that for years. Many people say that, and it's true. The reason for that boils down essentially to the fact that destroyers are the stealthiest class, and being stealthy, that allows them to get into objectives like this alpha capture circle that we just took. And also, it makes them the eyes of the team. You get closer to the enemy, you spot them, you don't get seen in return, and then your teammates, like other cruisers and battleships, can shoot at the targets you're spotting. And of course, the other main role of a destroyer is to counter and sink the enemy destroyers. And now that the Leone has sap, well, you saw the kind of damage there we got against that Omaha when we shot at him twice. 6,378. That's 2 salvos. One of them was pretty good, the second one, not so much. You can imagine how that would look against an enemy destroyer, especially one down here at Tier 5. They don't tend to have a lot of HP at all. And so, this kind of damage that the Leone can dish out with its newly minted sap guns can be absolutely lethal to them. Now, we've taken this alpha cap. The Omaha is not yet sunk. I think our cruiser teammate that was assisting us is sunk. And we've got 2 battleships that are somewhere north of the alpha cap, near our own spawn, who may or may not have shots in this area. I think they do. They're shooting at the Britannia out there. But what we want to do is essentially stop the enemy from coming into this capture circle if we can. And we're feeling somewhat confident about the Leone's sap power. You can see again the damage against the Omaha, which of course is a very lightly armored cruiser, basically battleship dev strike bait. A lot of people say the Omaha is a pretty good cruiser because I guess it does have a lot of main battery guns and it can deal a lot of damage, especially to destroyers. I think maybe we're being a little bit reckless here because as you can see, the Omaha can at least hit us intermittently here. But we do land some torpedoes on the battleship. We do a good deal of damage there. And we don't quite finish off the Leone, or not the Leone, sorry, the Omaha. But he doesn't have a lot of HP left, and he's not going to come into the capture circle. At least not yet. Doesn't look like Britannia is either, and the blue team has captured Charlie. We, of course, secured Alpha. Bravo is as of yet unclaimed, and Britannia is about to go around this island. But there's a lot of enemy ships that were last spotted in this part of the map, which is why we are not leaving it for Bravo. We otherwise might do that. But I think it's important to stay here and spot whatever's going to come around this corner for the benefit of the 2 battleships that are behind us. And, well, they're not exactly playing the match as attentively as I might prefer. It appears one of them is perhaps hiding behind an island, which of course is useful. But they're not going to be able to do literally anything at all unless we spot for them. And here comes Omaha, but now we've got, a ton of enemy ships in the area. There's that California out there, there's another cruiser. Britannia is still somewhere behind the island. And I was thinking what we ought to do is try to get some torps on Britannia, finish him off, and probably take out Omaha with the main battery guns. That's going to help. We're ahead of the enemy on kills at this point, but only by one. Somebody's starting to flip the Charlie cap, and there's still one destroyer left alive in this match. I have no idea where it's at. Could be in Charlie, but it looks like a cruiser is responsible for starting to flip that, so that's probably not it. Definitely not in Bravo, since it's as of yet unclaimed. Could be in this cap where we're at now. They flipped the Alpha cap that we worked so hard to take in the beginning. Britannia comes around the corner. Omaha finally gives us broadside. We shoot at him, get 3 shatters and 2 pens. Not quite enough to take him out. And of course, deploying our smoke screen to prevent the enemy from shooting back at us eliminates our vision of everything for the 2 battleships out there who, well, they're in pretty pristine condition, but they do have guns. We need them to probably shoot those guns. And here, we've made a terrible mistake. We really should have turned out with all these ships here, but we turn in, and all of a sudden, boom, we're spotted. But there is the enemy Mayhan. And here, you get the idea of how lethal the Leone is now versus enemy destroyers. Look at that. That is a 2 HP bar Mayhan, and it took 3 salvos with the main battery reload booster to take him out. Now, of course, in that endeavor, we ourselves get sunk. But sinking the enemy destroyer, you can't overemphasize how important that is, because we would go on to win this battle. Even though we sunk pretty early, we did enough in sinking that Mayhan to be on the top of the leaderboard for the victorious team. If we hadn't sunk that Mayhan, who knows? That might have not gone as well. And that right there is the main reason why I think the Leone is so good now in 2026. Now, this battle, it's, I suppose, a pretty good one. I think we do a little bit higher damage than we did in that one, but it is unfortunately going to end up being a loss. So we'll call the shots as they go, but before we get into all that, we should probably talk about the particulars of the buff. If you go to the Ministry of Balance article and look at the Italian destroyer's rework heading, Leone is the first ship listed. What they did was they added an optional upgrade that swaps AP shells for SAP shells. It's a 3rd module slot, and you can take it or not, but I don't know why you wouldn't take it. The main battery reload time with the SAP upgrade is increased from a base of 8 seconds to 9 seconds. And the main battery SAP shells deal 2,350 damage base and can pen up to 34 millimeters. The ship HP was also increased from a base of 13,700 to 15,000 with the saturation adjusted proportionally. And then finally, a main battery reload booster consumable was added as an option in the 3rd consumable slot to replace the engine boost. Now, you can see we've elected to do that. You get 2 charges of the consumable base. Reload time is 120 seconds. Duration is 15. And for those 15 seconds, the main battery reload booster reduces the reload time by 50%. The Leone, with this SAP and with the main battery reload booster, is a certified monster, as you can see. Now, as we're taking this capture circle, I'll show you the commander build and the mod selection. Of course, we've got the aiming systems mod 1, propulsion, and the SAP module. And then we're using Luigi Rizzo as the commander. He's the, I suppose, Italian gunboat commander. We've got Sims and Bergamini as his inspirations. And as such, we've buffed the HP from 15,000 and I think 500 to 17,000 even. That probably gives us some of the most HP of any DD at tier 5. And of course, Bergamini reduces incoming damage from shells, torpedoes, and bombs to your destroyer per 1% HP lost. And so the more damage you take, the less damage you take with that guy as an inspiration. It can be the difference between being sunk and just being damaged, so there's that. Bit of a tank build, you could say. And of course, we're spec'd into the main battery guns with the Observant Range skill on the commander that reduces the reload time by 5%. His second row skill, Swordfish, is the special one, increases sap shell damage by 5%, torpedo damage by 5%, and rather uselessly increases engine boost duration by 10%. Obviously, we don't have that since we have the reload booster. And then we've got the 1,000 cut skill instead of twist and track or something like that. Maybe we should be running twist and track. The turret traverse here is pretty slow. Wouldn't be bad to have that indicator for the position of the nearest enemy ship. But 1,000 cuts reduces the main battery reload time by 8%. And then finally, we've got the, oh, you know what? We have the go all out skill. I don't know why we're running that. We ought to be running one of the other skills, probably the Cloudy Days one for the smoke screen. I don't know if actually I had go all out selected for these battles. It might have actually been a different preset. I can't remember now, but it would be useless to run go all out on this thing. Anyway, here's Benson, another good example of just how lethal the Leone is. Although I don't know, do we finish him off? Yeah, we do. 9,000 damage there, not exactly his full HP. But we've eliminated the threat from the Bravo cap after having taken Alpha, and as you can see, the blue team has taken Charlie, but looks like the red team are about to make a push for that cap, which is why we're headed in that direction, and we probably aren't going to get there too fast. Somebody was contesting this cap, maybe the other enemy DD, yep, there it is, the Fubuki, trying to retreat, smoking up, and, well, the one problem, though, I will say with these sap guns, is that if a target is angled, the sap can bounce and deal no damage. Probably would have been the case there with the Fubuki. But if we chase him out of the cap and secure it, that's probably a good thing. Then we'll head over here to this push of 3 ships and try to stop them. This is going to be one of those scenarios where the blue team essentially takes all of the capture circles within the first 5 minutes and then manages to lose as the red team pushes in, maybe because the blue team itself is pushing in too aggressively after having already secured the win conditions and playing into the enemy's hands. Not sure. But I think we also ought to talk about how the main battery guns function and the torpedo damage. It's been a very long time since I've gone over the specs of this ship. I don't think I've actually featured this ship at all since it was first released and in a rather terrible state. So for these main battery guns, what we're working with here is 8 120mm guns, and that's unusual, especially at tier 5, for a destroyer to have that many guns. You mostly find that at the higher tiers, you know, Khabarovsk and other things like that. They have 8 guns, but something at tier 5, that's a lot of firepower. The guns with this build range out to 10.5 kilometers, and even though the base reload time is 9 seconds with the sap, they shoot in 7.8 seconds. Now, we've buffed the reload a little bit with the build. Turret traverse time is 18 seconds, which is not unmanageable, but it's not ideal either. Twist and track would probably be helpful there. The turrets do feel rather sluggish, although these 3 rear turrets here in the ship, when you're kiting away, I think they have like a 360-degree rotation, something like that. You can change them easily from one side of the ship to the other. Now, the sap, with Luigi Rizzo's special skill active, does maximum of 2,468 per shell. Of course, it pens the 34 millimeters, and then we have HE, which is useful if we get some torpedo hits on an enemy battleship out there, like the Ismail. The HE does 1,700 damage. It's got a 6% fire chance. It's only got 20 millimeters of pen, though, so it'll get through, I suppose, battleship superstructures and, of course, destroyer hulls. You got an angled destroyer. You're probably going to need to switch to the HE to actually penetrate it. Now, we've talked about the survivability as well, but we should talk about the torpedoes too. I wouldn't say that's the main calling card of this ship, but we have 4 torpedoes hit, and I think in that first battle we might have got some more, but pause on that thought for a second. Main battery reload booster for, I think, the first time in this battle. We're going to utilize it here to take out the Dallas, which of course is a cruiser. With this kind of sap power, the Leone doesn't even have to fear light cruisers like that when they're on low HP. It can pretty easily finish them off with the power of this sap in the reload booster. And of course, here we are going to switch to HE to try to get a fire on the Ismail. Hopefully, his DCP is still on cooldown from the flood we caused with the torps. But anyway, back to the torps. They have a range of 11 kilometers. There's only 4 of them and 2 double launchers, so it's not a lot of volume. But 11 km range, really slow speed, Italian sea mine stuff at 51 knots. However, they do reload in 47 seconds, and they do a maximum simulated damage of 13,029. On top of that, they are ultra stealthy. They only have a detectability range of 1 kilometer by sea. So that shouldn't give a ton of reaction time by the time your target spots them. They just don't necessarily pack enough punch to be super lethal. This is not like a little Paolo Emilio where you can activate the exhaust smoke screen, drive into an enemy battleship, and dev strike them with the torpedoes. Not going to happen unless they're on really low HP. The 13,000 isn't a lot, especially when you take into account torpedo damage reduction. And the concealment is 6.2. We're not spec'd into it at all. No concealment inspirations or skills on the commander build. That, I think, is just the base concealment. We've got nothing built into that. So I suppose it could get stealthy if you did want to spec into it, and doing so might not be a bad idea. But I didn't find any issue with 6.2 kilometers, really not that much anyway. A lot of destroyers down here don't seem to necessarily spec for concealment, with this being more of a mid-tier. I think you get maybe a lot of newer players down here with not a lot of resources in their commanders, and maybe not a lot of commanders in general, so a lot of destroyers are rather conspicuous. Anyway, this battle could still go either way, I suppose. We've got this one cruiser left alive near us. We've got the CV left alive. Duke of York is in here inside of the Charlie cap. And we're going to try to retake the cap, which I think we'll be successful in doing. But we've got another full health battleship way out there in the enemy spawn. The Alpha cap is blue for the moment. I think he's going to head into that cap. And there's a third battleship somewhere, too. I'm not quite sure where it is. It was last spotted in the Bravo cap, actually. He's the one that's going to head to Alpha and start flipping it. And then on top of that, we've got that Fubuki still left alive that we saw earlier. Enemy CV is sunk. His planes are coming in. I will say the Leone has absolutely no AA to speak of. I mean, it's got some of it, but doesn't seem all that capable of shooting down planes. So you just have to dodge, I guess. We'll do that here as he drops the torps. Not that big of a problem, I suppose. But we can't quite take this cap yet until the enemy battleship exits, which he does. In the meantime, somehow the friendly CV has gone down. I don't know why. I think maybe he was driving toward the Alpha cap. I didn't see what happened, but he's gone. So it's just me and this cruiser, who's probably a one-shot kill from one of the battleships. We're still ahead on points by virtue of the blue team taking so many caps early on, and I think we're about to secure the Charlie cap. But with the Reds in Alpha, and with this battleship here also retreating from us, I think at this point, the only way we're really going to win this battle, especially since the friendly cruiser is, I think, spotted by the Duke of York here. He's being shot at, I think, by that enemy cruiser out there who's on low HP, that enemy battleship out there. Trying to finish off the Duke of York to reduce the numbers, but it is the Duke of York who finishes off the friendly cruiser while getting the Kraken unleashed in the process. GG to that guy. I think he probably carried his team here. And, well, now we're all alone versus the Fubuki and 2 battleships. And as you can see, the enemy is already ahead of us on points, and there's not a lot of time left to go in this battle. So I was thinking the only way we win is if we somehow are able to secure the Bravo cap. But the problem with that is we've got one battleship out there, we've got another battleship somewhere to the right-hand side of the screen, and we have no clue where the Fubuki is, but looks like we're located by him. So we sail in here, we get spotted by the Fubuki, we're going to be shot at by him, and then we're going to be crossfired by the West Virginia and the enemy battleship that we still haven't quite spotted yet. So, big risk, but you've got to take risks in a situation like this. We're not going to win by simply running away. They're already ahead of us on points. We've got no chance. We either need to take this cap or do some sinking. We've got one smoke screen left, one main battery reload booster left as well. We do, though, get outspotted by the Fubuki, which is, somewhat problematic. He's got decent guns of his own. He gets a good hit on us, and we probably should have deployed the smoke screen immediately. We don't, but we do get the Confederate medal, just showing how much damage potential this thing has, and we nearly take out the Fubuki at the very least before we go down and lose the battle. But I think these two battles here together show you the capabilities of the Leone. Obviously, we didn't get a ton of damage, like 150k or anything like that, but we got a lot of really effective damage against enemy destroyers, a lot of good XP numbers here, and I think the Leone may now be one of the best destroyers at Tier 5. If you have it lying around in your port, and you thought like me it was terrible after it was first released, although you might have thought it was better after its first buff, these days it's really, really good. I really enjoyed my time playing it, actually. This is one of the most incredible redemptions for a ship I've seen in World of Warships Legends. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.